The night sky above Earth's largest radio telescope in New Mexico changed forever on December 15th. Tom Wilson, the night shift operator, was about to take his coffee break when the instruments began showing readings unlike anything he had seen in his 15 years at the facility. "This can't be right," he muttered, adjusting his glasses as he stared at the rapidly changing numbers on his screen. The signal was powerful, structured, and definitely not natural. His hands trembled as he reached for the phone to call his supervisor. Within hours, every major observatory on Earth was focused on the same region of space near Saturn. The signal wasn't just a random burst of energy. It was a message, repeating over and over in mathematical sequences that even the simplest computers could decode. The message was simple: help, stranded, engines failing, life support critical, millions at risk. World leaders received their briefings as dawn broke over each continent. The U.S. president stood in the Oval Office, looking out at the early morning sky with a mixture of wonder and concern. The message had been translated, and its implications were staggering. An alien fleet carrying millions of refugees was trapped in orbit around Saturn, their advanced engines failing for reasons they couldn't explain. The first images from space telescopes arrived by midnight. The fleet was massive, 27 ships, each one larger than Earth's largest cities. Their sleek silver hulls reflected Saturn's rings, creating a spectacular sight that would have been beautiful if not for the emergency at hand. "They're not moving like they should," said Dr. Adams at NASA's Control Center, pointing at the radar tracks. "Their orbit is decaying slowly. Whatever happened to their engines, it's serious." He turned to look at the room full of scientists and military officials. "They've got maybe 3 months before they start falling into Saturn's atmosphere." The aliens sent more detailed messages as Earth's government scrambled to respond. They called themselves the Unified Fleet, carrying refugees from a dying star system hundreds of light years away. Their antimatter drives, capable of bending space itself, had mysteriously failed as they passed through our solar system. Their best engineers were stumped. The technology was too advanced, too complex to diagnose quickly enough. "We have tried everything within our knowledge," the alien message continued. "Our systems are beyond our ability to repair in time. We detected your radio signals and civilization. Though your technology appears primitive to us, we have no choice but to ask for help. Please respond." The irony wasn't lost on anyone. A civilization advanced enough to cross the stars was now asking Earth for help. Their technology was so sophisticated that when it broke down, they couldn't fix it. Like a computer expert unable to fix a broken bicycle, they had lost touch with basic mechanical principles. Earth's response was immediate and unified for the first time in history. Every space agency began working together. Ships were prepared, plans were made, and humanity faced its first true test as a spacefaring civilization. "We should send them our best scientists," suggested one advisor at the emergency UN meeting. "No," said Bill Cooper, an old NASA flight director. "What we need are practical people, engineers who work with their hands, people who fix things." He looked around the room. "These aliens have plenty of scientists. What they need are mechanics." The truth of his words sank in. The aliens had mastered the most advanced physics in the universe, but had forgotten the basics. They needed people who understood fundamental principles, who could work with simple tools and basic materials. As the sun set on that first historic day, humanity began its greatest project. Somewhere out there, around the rings of Saturn, millions of alien lives hung in the balance. Their fate now rested in the hands of the very civilization they had considered primitive. The next morning, as the world woke up to the news of first contact, recruitment began for the most important repair job in human history: Earth's best practical problem solvers. Engineers, mechanics, and technicians were about to show the galaxy that sometimes the simplest solutions were the best ones. The rescue mission was about to begin. 3 days after first contact, the world's best engineers gathered in Houston Space Center. The massive screen before them showed detailed images of the alien ships, their elegant designs glowing against the backdrop of Saturn's rings. But it wasn't the ship's beauty that caught Jack Miller's attention. It was their engines. Jack wasn't supposed to be there. He spent his days fixing deep-sea oil rigs in the Gulf of Mexico, not planning space missions. But when NASA called for practical engineers, his boss had recommended him immediately. "Jack can fix anything," his boss had said, "especially when everything's going wrong." Now, standing in his worn work boots among scientists in pristine lab coats, Jack studied the alien engine diagrams. While others marveled at the advanced technology, he saw something familiar. "It's like a pump system," he said suddenly, his voice cutting through the quiet discussions. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to him. Jack cleared his throat, uncomfortable with the attention, but certain of his observation. "Sorry, but these antimatter engines, they're just really fancy pumps when you get down to it." Dr. Williams, the lead scientist, frowned. "These are highly advanced propulsion systems that bend space-time. They're nothing like—" "No, he's right," interrupted Robert Hayes, another engineer who spent his life fixing cargo ships. "Strip away all the fancy parts, and you've got something that moves stuff from one place to another, just like a pump." The alien representatives, watching through a video link, spoke up. Their translator conveyed their confusion. "Our engines manipulate the fabric of space itself. How can you compare them to such simple machines?" Jack walked to the screen, pointing at specific parts of the engine diagram. "Look here and here. You've got material flowing through chambers, being compressed and released. Sure, it's antimatter instead of water, and you're bending space instead of pushing oil, but the principles are the same." The room buzzed with conversation. Jack continued, drawing from 20 years of fixing things in impossible conditions. "When we repair rigs in deep water, we can't always see what's wrong. We have to feel it, understand how things should flow. These engines, they're stuck because something's blocking the flow." Robert joined him at the screen. "We deal with similar issues on ships. Sometimes the most high-tech systems fail because of simple mechanical problems. A blocked valve, a misaligned joint." The aliens were silent for a long moment. Finally, their translator spoke. "We have been approaching this problem from the perspective of quantum mechanics and spatial dynamics. No one considered basic mechanical principles." Dr. Williams still looked skeptical. "Even if you're right, how do we fix engines we barely understand?" "We don't need to understand all of it," Jack replied. "We just need to understand how it's supposed to work and what's stopping it. Like when I'm underwater with zero visibility, fixing a rig by feel. You work with what you know." The alien representatives conferred among themselves. Their next message surprised everyone. "We request that these practical engineers lead the repair effort." The room erupted in debate. Scientists argued about safety protocols and theoretical requirements. But the aliens were firm. They had tried their way. Now they wanted to try humanity's approach. By evening, a new plan was forming. Jack and Robert would lead a team of practical engineers, people who fixed things for a living. They would work alongside alien engineers, combining human mechanical knowledge with alien technology. "We'll need to modify our tools," Jack said, sketching ideas on a notepad. "Design new ones for space, but the principles are the same whether you're a mile underwater or near Saturn." The aliens sent one final message before the meeting ended. "Our civilization advanced so far that we forgot the importance of basic engineering. Perhaps that is why we failed. We look forward to learning from you." As people filed out of the room, Dr. Williams stopped beside Jack. "Do you really think you can fix something so advanced?" Jack smiled, thinking of all the impossible repairs he'd managed over the years. "Doctor, sometimes the most advanced solution isn't the right one. Sometimes you just need a wrench and the knowledge of how things should flow." The real work was about to begin, and humanity's practical knowledge would soon be tested against the greatest engineering challenge in history. The NASA training pool looked strange at midnight. Underwater lights illuminated a massive mock-up of the alien engine's outer chamber, built based on the diagrams they'd received. Jack floated beside it in his diving gear, with Robert watching from the pool's edge. "Try it again," Robert called out. Mary's watching the flow meters. Mary Thompson stood at the monitoring station. She'd spent 15 years as a welder in shipyards before NASA recruited her. Now she studied the readings from their test setup, frowning at the numbers. "The flow's all wrong," she said into her microphone. "Just like in the alien engines. Something's creating a blockage." For 2 weeks, they'd been replicating the aliens' problem using Earth technology. They built a simplified version of the engine's flow system, replacing antimatter with water to understand the basic mechanics. It wasn't perfect, but it helped them understand what might be going wrong 746 million miles away near Saturn. Jack swam closer to the mock-up, his hands running over the joints and connections. Even through thick diving gloves, his fingers could feel how the water moved through the system. 20 years of underwater repairs had taught him to trust his hands as much as his eyes. "Hold on," he said suddenly. "Cut the pumps." As the water stopped flowing, Jack pressed his palm against a curved section of pipe. "Mary, remember that vibration pattern the aliens reported? I think I know what's causing it." He swam to the surface and pulled himself out of the pool. Dripping wet, he walked to the whiteboard where they kept their notes. The alien representatives watched through their usual video link, curious about these strange human testing methods. "Look here," Jack said, drawing a quick diagram. "The aliens designed these chambers to be perfect, every curve calculated to the smallest measurement. But that's the problem. They're too perfect." Robert stepped closer, understanding beginning to show on his face. Like those super-efficient engines that break down because they can't handle real-world conditions. "Exactly," Jack continued. "In theory, their design is perfect. But in reality, when you're pumping something as powerful as antimatter," he turned to the alien representatives, "your engine chambers need imperfections." The aliens' confusion was clear in their translated response. Imperfections would reduce efficiency by 0.34%. Mary laughed. "Sometimes you need a little inefficiency to keep things running smooth, like the grooves in a tire or the texture on a ship's hull." Jack pointed to their test setup. "The smooth channels are creating harmonic vibrations, small at first, but they build up until they disrupt the flow. That's why your engines are failing." He grabbed a piece of paper and drew another diagram. "We need to add artificial imperfections, carefully placed ridges and curves that break up the harmonics, like sound baffles in a concert hall." The aliens were silent for a long time. Finally, their translator spoke. "Our engineers have always pursued perfection. The idea of intentional imperfection is difficult to accept." "Perfect isn't always better," Robert said. "Sometimes you need a bit of roughness to make things work right." Over the next few hours, they tested their theory in the pool. Mary welded small ridges into their test chamber, while Jack monitored the flow underwater. The results were immediate. The vibrations disappeared, and the flow stabilized. "The real challenge," Mary said later, as they reviewed the data, "will be adapting our solution for space. We need to design tools that can modify the actual engine chambers without damaging them." Jack nodded. "And we need to figure out how to work in space instead of underwater. But the principle is solid." The aliens sent their response. "We have reviewed your test results. While the solution seems counterintuitive, we cannot argue with the data. How soon can you begin the actual repairs?" 2 weeks, Jack said confidently. "We need to train more teams and build the space tools. But we know what we're doing now." As the meeting ended, Mary looked at their test setup one last time. "You know what's funny? These aliens crossed hundreds of light years with their perfect engines. But in the end, they needed humans to teach them that sometimes imperfect is better." "That's engineering for you," Robert replied with a smile. "Theory gets you started, but experience gets you home." The next phase would be harder, translating their pool tests into actual space repairs. But for the first time since the crisis began, they had a real solution. Sometimes the best answers came from the simplest understanding of how things worked. The warning came at 3 a.m. Houston time. The largest alien ship's orbit had dropped another 100 kilometers. In the mission control room, Jack stared at the tracking data while drinking his fourth cup of coffee. "They're falling faster than we predicted," Robert said, pointing at the screen. That last orbital shift burned up more fuel than they could spare. The situation was getting worse by the hour. The alien fleet's emergency systems were working overtime to maintain their position around Saturn, but each correction burned precious fuel. It was a deadly cycle. The more fuel they used to stay in orbit, the less they had to power their life support systems. "How many people on that ship?" Jack asked, though he already knew the answer. 400,000 refugees, Mary answered, looking up from her tablet. "And that's just the biggest one. The others aren't far behind." The prototype repair tools lay spread out on the table before them. They looked like strange crosses between deep-sea equipment and space gear. Welding torches modified to work in vacuum, sensors designed to detect antimatter flow patterns, and specially crafted tools for adding the crucial imperfections to the engine chambers. An alarm beeped on one of the monitoring stations. The alien representatives appeared on the main screen, their message urgent: "Life support failing on ships 7 and 12. Backup systems engage, but power reserves critical." Jack ran his hand through his hair, a habit he'd developed during stressful repairs. "We need to launch now. The tools work in the test chamber. They'll have to work up there too." "The last simulation," one of the NASA officials started to say. "We're out of time for simulations," Robert cut in. "Those ships are carrying families, children. We can't wait any longer." Mary nodded, already reaching for her phone to call her repair team. They had trained 48 engineers and technicians, deep-sea welders, oil rig mechanics, and ship repair specialists, people who knew how to fix things when failure wasn't an option. "Launch preparations will take 12 hours, the NASA flight director announced. "If we start now, we can have the first team in space by tomorrow evening." The next 12 hours passed in a blur of activity. Around the world, space agencies coordinated their efforts. Russian heavy-lift rockets were prepared to carry equipment. European Space Agency shuttles were readied for the repair teams. Chinese space stations adjusted their orbits to act as waypoints for the mission. In the suit-up room, Jack helped Mary check her modified spacesuit. They had trained for this in the pool, but space would be different. No water resistance to steady their movements, no easy up or down, and no quick return to safety if something went wrong. "Remember the oil rig collapse in 22? Mary asked as she tested her suit's joints. "Everyone said that was impossible to fix too." Jack smiled, remembering the desperate repair job 500 feet underwater in the middle of a storm. "We fixed it then. We'll fix this now." The alien representatives sent another message. "Our engineers have studied your repair plan extensively. While we still find the concept of intentional imperfection challenging, we trust your experience. Our maintenance crews are ready to assist you." Robert entered the room, carrying the final test results from their equipment. All tools are green-lit. The modified welders work perfectly in vacuum conditions. If your theory about the harmonics is right, this should work. "It'll work," Jack said with quiet confidence, "because it has to." As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, the repair teams headed for their launch sites. Around Saturn, millions of refugees waited in their slowly failing ships, putting their hopes in the hands of engineers from a planet they had once considered technologically primitive. In the ready room, Jack checked his tools one last time. The modified wrench he'd designed felt familiar in his hand, even through the thick space suit glove. Looking through the window at the massive rocket waiting on the launch pad, he thought about all the impossible repairs he faced in his career. This was just another repair job. A big one, sure. An important one, definitely. But in the end, it came down to the same things it always did: understanding the problem, having the right tools, and knowing how things should work. All repair teams report for launch sequence, the speaker announced. It was time to find out if humanity's practical knowledge could save a civilization that had mastered the stars. Saturn's rings stretched out like a giant golden disk against the black of space. Jack floated near the hull of the largest alien ship, the sight taking his breath away. But he couldn't afford to be distracted. There was work to do. All teams, radio check, he called out, trying to ignore the fact that he was working 746 million miles from home. Team 2, ready. Mary's voice crackled through the comm. Team 3, in position. Robert responded from the other side of the massive engine housing. The alien ship dwarfed anything humans had ever built. Its engine chamber alone was the size of a football field. Jack activated his magnetic boots, connecting to the hull with a solid thunk. At least some things work the same in space as they did underwater. Beginning entry procedure, he announced. The alien maintenance crew had opened an access panel, revealing the complex internal workings of their antimatter drive. Jack's helmet lights illuminated the perfectly smooth channels that they needed to modify. "Remember your training," he said to his team. "Just like in the pool, except no bubbles." The first challenge came immediately. The modified welding tools, which had worked perfectly in testing, struggled against the super-dense alien metal. Mary's voice came through the radio, calm despite the setback. "Increasing power to 150%. Jack, watch your heat readings." Jack pressed the welder against the metal surface, feeling the vibration through his suit. Slowly, carefully, he began creating the precise pattern of ridges they had designed. Each imperfection had to be perfect, a thought that still made him smile at the irony. Movement detected in Sector 4. Mission Control warned from Earth. The ship is shifting orbit. Robert's voice was tense. "We've got 15 minutes before we lose our work angle. Jack, we need to speed this up." "Negative," Jack replied, continuing his careful work. "We do this right, or we don't do it at all." Through his faceplate, he could see alien faces watching from nearby viewports. Whole families were pressed against the windows, watching the human repair crews work. The sight steeled his resolve. "First pattern complete," he announced, moving to the next section. "Mary, start your sequence." Hours passed in intense concentration. They worked in shifts, each team covering their assigned sections of the massive engine. The modified tools held up, though they had to recharge them more often than expected. The alien crew helped, learning quickly how to assist the human workers. "Jack," Mission Control called, "we're detecting harmonic changes in the engine structure. The modifications are having an effect." He allowed himself a small smile. The theory was working. The intentional imperfections were breaking up the destructive vibration patterns that had plagued the alien drives. Then everything went wrong. "Emergency alert," the alien crew broadcasted. "Power fluctuation in central core. Automatic systems engaging." Jack felt the engine housing vibrate under his boots. "All teams, clear the area. Now." But Mary's voice cut through the chaos. "I'm almost done with my section. 2 more minutes." "Mary, that's an order." "Clear." "Done," she shouted. Final pattern complete. The vibrations peaked, then suddenly smoothed out. The engine housing hummed with a new, steady rhythm. Through the viewport, Jack saw alien engineers checking their instruments, their movements becoming excited, harmonics stabilizing. Mission Control reported, power flow returning to normal parameters. The alien captain's message followed. Engine efficiency at 97% and holding. The modifications, they are working. A cheer went up through all radio channels, human and alien alike. Jack watched as the first test firing of the repaired engine created a gentle blue glow around the massive ship. The orbit began to stabilize. "First ship complete," he announced, feeling the exhaustion hitting him. "Only 26 more to go." Robert's laugh came through the radio. "Hey, at least we know it works now." Not bad for a bunch of primitive engineers, right? Looking at Saturn's rings shining behind the alien fleet, Jack thought about how far they'd come. From fixing oil rigs in the Gulf of Mexico to repairing antimatter drives in space, it was quite a journey. But in the end, it all came down to the same basic principles. Understand the problem, trust your experience, and never be afraid to try something different. "All right, teams," he said, checking his tool readings. "Let's move to the next ship. We've got a lot more families to help." The repair operation was far from over, but they had proved something important today. Sometimes the most advanced civilizations needed to be reminded that simple solutions could solve complex problems. 2 weeks after the first successful repair, the observation deck of the alien flagship had been converted into an unusual classroom. Jack stood before a group of alien engineers, using a holographic display to explain the basics of mechanical engineering. The scene would have seemed impossible a month ago. "The key isn't in making things perfect," he explained, pointing to a diagram of their engine modifications. "It's about making things work reliably." The alien engineers, once proud of their advanced technology, now took careful notes. Through their translators, they asked questions about concepts their civilization had forgotten centuries ago. Basic mechanical principles, hands-on repair techniques, and the importance of practical experience. "Your species has mastered spaceflight without quantum computing," one alien engineer said, their translator conveying a tone of wonder. "You repair massive underwater structures without artificial intelligence. How?" Mary, who was preparing for another repair shift, smiled. "Because we know machines can fail. Computers can break. When that happens, you need to understand how things work at their most basic level." In another part of the ship, Robert was learning too. The alien maintenance crew showed him their tools, explaining technologies that seemed like magic. But now, instead of just relying on their advanced systems, they wanted to understand the principles behind them. "Look at this," Robert called to Jack, holding up what looked like a wrench. They'd had these basic tools all along, but they were only used in emergencies. Everything else was automated. The alien captain, who had been watching the exchange of knowledge, approached Jack. "Our civilization's progress led us to depend too much on automation. We forgot the importance of understanding our own technology." Through the observation window, they could see repair teams working on the last few ships in the fleet. The modified engines now worked better than their original design. The intentional imperfections didn't just fix the problem, they improved overall performance. "Sometimes moving forward means remembering what you learned in the past," Jack said, watching the teens work. His words were translated for the alien crew, causing a murmur of agreement. In the ship's dining area, human repair crews and alien families shared meals together. Despite their different biologies and need for different foods, they found ways to connect. Children from both species were especially curious about each other. "They want to know about Earth," Mary said, returning from lunch with an alien family. "They can't believe we still have oceans full of undiscovered creatures, that we repair things by hand, that we learn through trial and error." The aliens had begun implementing changes across their fleet. Automated systems were simplified. Backup mechanical systems were installed. Crew members were trained in basic repairs rather than just relying on computers. "Your ways seem primitive at first glance," an alien engineer admitted to Jack, "but they are robust, reliable. Our perfect systems are fragile in comparison." In the engine room, Robert was teaching a group of alien technicians how to detect problems by sound and vibration. "Your sensors are amazing," he told them, "but sometimes your own senses tell you more. Feel this vibration. That's your engine talking to you." The aliens were fascinated by human problem-solving methods. They studied the way repair teams adapted to unexpected challenges, how they used simple tools in creative ways, and how they passed knowledge through direct experience rather than just digital data. "We thought we had surpassed the need for such basic skills," the alien captain said during an evening briefing. "We were wrong. Your civilization has maintained a crucial balance we had lost." As the day ended, Jack looked out at Saturn's rings again. Human and alien repair crews worked side by side, each learning from the other. Their different approaches to technology were becoming something new, a combination of advanced science and practical wisdom. "You know what's funny?" he said to Mary and Robert as they watched the crews work. "They came here thinking they needed us to fix their engines, but what they really needed was to remember something they'd forgotten." "What's that?" Mary asked. "That sometimes the most advanced solution is remembering the basics." The repair mission had become more than just fixing engines. It had become a bridge between two different ways of thinking, proving that real progress meant balancing advancement with understanding. As night fell over Saturn's rings, both species knew they were better for having met each other. 1 month after the completion of the final engine repair, the alien flagship's command center buzzed with activity. Jack, Mary, and Robert stood with the alien captain, watching as the fleet prepared for departure. But something had changed in the past weeks. Many of the alien ships weren't leaving. 300,000 of our people have requested to stay," the alien captain announced through the translator. "They wish to establish a permanent settlement in your solar system, with Earth's permission, of course." The news didn't surprise Jack. During the repairs, many aliens had become fascinated with Earth culture and human ingenuity. They saw something valuable in humanity's approach to life and technology. "The United Nations has already approved the settlement," Robert said, looking at his tablet. "They're offering Mars as a potential colony site. Apparently, your environmental technology can make it habitable within a year." The alien captain nodded. "And in exchange, we will establish engineering schools on Earth. Our technology combined with your practical wisdom. Imagine what we could achieve together." On the lower decks, crews were already unloading equipment from the ships that would make the journey home. But they weren't just taking their own technology. They had requested hundreds of basic human tools, from wrenches to mechanical gauges. "Never thought I'd see an advanced alien civilization getting excited about hand tools," Mary said with a smile, watching as alien engineers carefully packed Earth-made equipment. The captain activated a holographic display showing both Earth and Mars. "We've also begun modifying our new ships using your principles. Simpler systems, mechanical backups, and crews trained in basic repairs. Our council has made it mandatory for all future vessels." Jack walked to the window, watching as the first group of ships prepared their engines for the long journey home. The modified drives hummed with a steady rhythm. No more dangerous harmonics, no more cascading failures. Human engineering had made alien technology more reliable. "Mission Control reports all systems are green," Robert announced. "The first wave is ready for departure." The ships that were leaving would carry more than just their original cargo. They were taking back new ideas, new ways of thinking, and a deep respect for a civilization they had once considered primitive. The humans had taught them that progress wasn't just about advancing technology, it was about understanding it. "We've prepared something for you," the alien captain said, gesturing to a side room. Inside was a strange device, about the size of a small car. "This is a simplified version of our matter replicator. We redesigned it using your principles: mechanical controls, user-serviceable parts, and clear indicators of how it works." Mary examined the device with professional interest. "You've added manual overrides to everything. And these diagnostic ports, they're designed for basic tools." "The first of many such modifications," the captain confirmed. "Your engineers will be able to understand it, repair it, and even improve it. We're calling it the Earth Series design." Outside, the first group of ships began to move. Their engines glowed with a soft blue light as they started their journey home. On Earth, millions watched through telescopes and video feeds as humanity's first alien contact prepared to end. But it wasn't really ending. Construction ships were already heading to Mars, preparing to build the first alien settlement in the solar system. Earth's space agencies were working with alien engineers to design new vessels that combined both approaches to technology. A new age of exploration was beginning. "It's funny," Jack said, watching the ships depart. "They came here thinking they needed emergency repairs. Instead, they found a whole new way of looking at technology. And we found out that we had something valuable to teach one of the most advanced civilizations in space," Robert added. The alien captain turned to the three humans. "Your species has shown us that true advancement isn't just about creating new technology. It's about understanding what you create, being able to fix it, and never losing touch with the basic principles that make it work." As the last ships prepared to leave, Jack thought about how far they'd come. From that first distress call to this moment, both civilizations had learned valuable lessons. The aliens had rediscovered the importance of practical knowledge, and humans had gained confidence in their own unique approach to technology. "Ready to help build that engineering school?" Mary asked Jack and Robert. Jack smiled, watching Saturn's rings shine behind the departing fleet. "Sure. Someone's got to teach the next generation that sometimes the best solutions are the simple ones." The future would bring new challenges, new discoveries, and new problems to solve. But now they would face them together, combining alien advancement with human practicality. It was the beginning of a partnership that would change both civilizations forever.